Hey guys, sorry I couldn't be there with you today. So I'm coming to you live through the interwebs here. It's nice to actually be able to talk to you and teach you without wearing a mask. So this is what I look like, just in case you didn't know. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about improving our introductions for rhetorical analysis. I talked about how we can improve our purpose statements already by, eliminating some of the unnecessary text and maybe getting rid of that cheat phrase of in order to, but by using a much stronger verb. And so I want to talk just a little bit about how to construct, I think, important thematic introductions that can help you to establish more of a reason for why you're writing an analysis, a line of reasoning that you can then follow throughout the text. And this should help you to kind of develop a sophistication point. Again, the introduction is just kind of like icing on the cake. It's not a replacement for a good solid thesis statement. And if I had to, take one of those two things, I'd way rather have you just state the thesis and move on. But because I think you're developing skills and you can move to that next step, I think we should talk a little bit about what a rhetorical analysis introduction looks like. As you can see, I have my trusty upside down triangle, which is all the instruction that I need to give you. But it's the same exact thing from that argument essay that we talked about. From the argument essay that we talked about, that we see here, right? You're still writing an essay to an audience and you're still trying to explain what's the importance of it, what's the bigger meaning of it. And so the whole concept is you still want to move from a broad statement about a big concept that you want to relate to the audience. And so for a rhetorical analysis where you're basing all of your writing off of another person's work or another person's text, that second S that we often forget from the soapstone becomes, I think, very important, right? The subject, as you can see, the subject of the article can often give you a way to kind of break into it, right? So for Peter Salgo's piece that we just read, that you have hopefully just talked about, the subject is the medical system as a whole, right? And he has a fairly large concern that the medical system is moving away from being patient-driven and needs-driven towards a more revenue-driven situation, right? And so if you wanted to start with a broad kind of connection, you want to reach out with that problem, right? That the doctor-patient relationship is something that is becoming fairly strained or almost absent from modern medicine, right? And so again, if you wanted to use a quotation, if you wanted to use a statistic, if you wanted to use a study that shows that patients are unhappy with the way that they're treated, you can show us that, hey, this is a big issue. This is a big problem, and hopefully get your audience to make a connection to or kind of recognize how you're writing, even an analysis, but how your writing can relate to them or teach them something important to the audience's needs. The middle part is where things are going to get a little bit different, because instead of bringing us into the topic of your argument, this is why transcendentalism is important to you, or this is why transcendentalism, a philosophy created by Emerson, can be beneficial, right? That's not necessarily what you're doing here, but that middle section, the purpose is still the same. This is where you're going to focus on the parameters of this essay, right? Tell us, what is it that you're going to focus on? What is it that you're going to talk about? And with an analysis, you're going to talk about the author, the decisions that he or she makes, and you're going to talk about their specific work. And so in this middle section, you've got to introduce your audience to the author and the title of that work. And that's kind of a non-negotiable for an introduction to an analysis. In order to understand the analysis you're pointing out, we have to be able to understand what essay or what book or what work you're talking about. So here you can make a move pretty easily, right? The first part, you're talking about these big, broad, sweeping problems or issues with the medical field. And here you can say, these problems were recognized by Peter Salgo and addressed in his essay, The Doctor Will See You for Exactly 7 Minutes, right? You've shown the relationship between what you're studying and the problem that you've identified, and you've kind of checked off those boxes. You've told us the author and you've told us the title of the work, right? Now I know that this bigger issue is going to be addressed. It was addressed in this piece that you're going to then talk about. So then it finally brings you down to your thesis statement or the purpose statement, where you are going to be analyzing what it is that Peter Salgo did. So basically the idea of a rhetorical analysis thesis statement is using these rhetorical choices or using a specific rhetorical devices. Peter Salgo is able to convince his audience of something, or is able to call his audience to some type of action, or is able to accuse the medical industry of something, right? Remember, I want you to use one of those really strong verbs, and hopefully that's already in the thesis statement that you've crafted. But for your thesis statement, you've got to have what is his purpose and what strategies does he use to accomplish that. And so hopefully this little explanation tells you how you can utilize this same exact upside down triangle inverted pyramid skill, but transfer it over to an essay other than argument. And truth be told, it doesn't matter if you're writing an analysis, it doesn't matter if you're writing an argument, it doesn't really matter if you're writing an informative article. This concept can ring true, and this should be what an intro looks like, right? Show your audience why this applies to them. Tell them a little bit more specifically what the topic of your essay is, whether it's an argument, whether it's an analysis, and then hit them with the thesis that's going to then drive their reading and hopefully has driven your writing of that essay as well. So right below the link for this video is an example that I wrote for Peter Salgo. It kind of takes my purpose that I kind of identified. You guys maybe recognize something different. And I also take the strategies that I thought were important, and I constructed a full introduction. So that could be a good way to kind of check my thoughts against your thoughts and what your group was able to come up with. So go ahead on the Google Classroom, click on that example paragraph, and then your assignment is to read this next work. It's called My Mother Never Worked. I want you to read it. There's some questions on there that I want you to answer. And then your assignment is, I want you to obviously prepare to talk about that piece, but I want you to write an inverted pyramid introduction for that work, for My Mother Never Worked. So hopefully we'll see you guys back soon. I will see you on Tuesday. Thanks. Have a good weekend.